happening tonight in Vancouver.
You haven't delved into things very far yet, and all of a sudden you have to go home and start teaching from home.
An elementary school in Chilliwack has closed after 20 students and staff members have tested positive for COVID-19. There are concerns this could just be the first of more school outbreaks to come.
Regularly in all the different schools of nursing around Canada, we have a large number of applicants, more than we actually have space for.
Nurses have had it tough during the COVID-19 pandemic, but interest in going to school to become one remains steady.
I don't understand how any business can just opt out and say we're not going to do this.
Businesses that haven't been asking customers for proof of vaccination should start to expect visits from authorities. Just ahead, the province starts cracking down on non-compliant establishments.
This is City News Everywhere.
We just started the school year. It is unbelievable that we're already shutting down a school for an outbreak.
A COVID-19 outbreak has been declared at a Chilliwack elementary school, forcing the school to close until at least October 3rd, effective immediately. The news has parents across the Lower Mainland fearful as to what's next as their own children continue to attend in-person classes despite those under the age of 12 not being eligible for a vaccine.
Students are just getting to know you. You're just setting routines. You haven't delved into things very far yet.
A few weeks into the new school year and already a COVID-19 outbreak has been declared at Promontory Heights Elementary School in Chilliwack, forcing the school to close until early October. In a release sent to parents and staff at the Chilliwack School, Fraser Health says all unvaccinated staff and students from the affected grades are to self-isolate at home, while others affected will receive self-monitoring instructions. The health authority says there are 20 positive COVID-19 cases among staff and students connected to the outbreak.
I think that there should have been other protocols put in place. Some of the protocols that were relaxed a bit from last year should have been involved this year. Things like plexiglass barriers between teachers and cohorts perhaps, or some social distancing, which is not part of the protocols any longer.
Premier Horgan took a moment to address parents, students and staff Thursday, reiterating the province takes school exposures extremely seriously.
The notifications went out last evening when the outbreak was identified. We've made amendments to notifications for that very reason. Contact tracing is underway, and we're doing our level best to make sure that anyone who's had direct contact with someone with COVID-19 is advised.
Kayenta Martins has 2 children in the Vancouver School District, one in grade 5 and the other in grade 7. She's heard from many parents who say they don't know what they will do if their child's school is next to shut down.
A lot of parents are going to be struggling between trying to find care for their kids, trying to be able to work. If they're lucky and they can work from home, I'm in that position, then it's a little more flexible, but it's still hard.
Infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh says more school closures are inevitable as the Delta variant continues to spread.
This is really a wake-up call for under-vaccinated communities and, quite frankly, leadership of under-vaccinated communities to really step up and start looking at different ways that you can promote vaccination in those settings.
Earlier this week, Pfizer said its product is safe and effective for children aged 5 to 11, and that it will seek U.S. authorization for this age group in the coming weeks. Dr. Bonnie Henry acknowledged Tuesday that BC will be ready when Canada is given the go-ahead to administer the vaccine to children.
And I think this will be really important, especially as we're into the school year again.
In New Westminster, Ashley Burr, City News.
BC is reporting 832 new cases of COVID-19 and 5 new deaths. There are currently 5,697 active cases in the province. 330 people are in hospital, with 148 of those in intensive care. From September 8th to the 21st, people not vaccinated accounted for 83% of hospitalizations. The percentage of BC's population fully vaccinated is almost at 80%.
If that business doesn't want to comply and openly wants to defy it and, puts health at risk here, they should be closed.
There are still businesses and restaurants in BC that are failing to ask customers for their vaccine cards. And now the province is starting to crack down on businesses that are ignoring the public health order.
Well, I am disappointed. I would be misleading if I said anything other than that.
I don't understand how any business can just opt out and say we're not going to do this.
Ian Tostenson with the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association says the province now has a list of more than 60 businesses that aren't enforcing the vaccine card.
We understand now the government is just starting to enforce it. They have an option to counsel the business to get back into compliance, or they can provide a fine of up to $2,300, or they can ultimately close that business.
But some businesses in Surrey say enforcement is becoming a risk for their staff.
Our staff is being threatened by people who are coming to dine in here. It's become very difficult to explain to people that this is a government need. Lots of our businesses turned back because half the people either they don't have an identification or they don't have a passport for their vaccine.
I'm double vaccinated. I believe in it, in the vaccine, but I don't like to be a policeman.
Walter Wolf, who owns the Fresco restaurant, completely changed his business model from a table service to a quick-serve restaurant, so he doesn't have to enforce the vaccine card. He also suspended his liquor license.
I don't think the asking question should be me because I'm in a very bad area. In my business, I was twice stabbed. Twice I looked into pistols, and I don't like to ask too many questions to people.
We're trying to iron that out. We realize that there's some problems, and you're right. There is a business in Surrey that is not serving liquor and is basically a quick service restaurant, and that's what they decided to do, and I hope they're very successful.
Tostenson says they're working with the government to help businesses offset the cost of enforcement.
If a restaurant has to put someone at the front of their restaurant full-time, that could cost them $5,000 a month, and that is simply not fair for that restaurant to have to endure that cost.
In Surrey, Keir Junos, City News.
2 men have been injured in an early morning shooting in Surrey. RCMP say 2 male victims aged 23 and 47 were attacked in a home in the Newton neighborhood around 5 a.m. Both men are expected to survive. Investigators say this was a targeted attack. One of the victims is known to police and was shot while standing in the driveway of the same home about 2 months ago. Neighbors in the area expressed concern as this type of violence has become more common in the area.
It's understandable that someone residing in that neighborhood would be fearful given the fact that there have been multiple shootings at that residence within the last few months. Our investigators are currently evaluating to determine if we do feel that there is additional risk and if we do need to release additional information to the public to make them aware of the circumstances. The best advice we can give right now is to neighbors, be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. When you see something suspicious, call police and report it.
A passenger has died after a vehicle collision in Abbotsford Wednesday afternoon. According to Abbotsford police, crews responded to an incident involving a truck and sedan around 3:15 p.m. At Mount Lehman Road between Great Northern Way and Progressive Way, just south of the Fraser Highway. Police have confirmed the passenger of the sedan has died while the driver is in serious condition in hospital. The driver of the truck was also transferred to hospital for minor injuries. TransLink is reporting its highest boost in ridership in 18 months. The increase attributed to the return of people to offices and students to classrooms. They say an increase in ridership is typical for September, but this year the increase is 5 points higher than previous years. TransLink says routes serving universities saw some of the biggest gains. Overall, system-wide ridership is still at about 55% of pre-COVID levels.
We're builders, we're healers, we're folks who care about one another.
Canada has elected its first two-spirited MP, along with a record number of 2S LGBTQ+ parliamentarians.
And I think the students who are coming in are very aware of what's going on, and they really know that they're coming into a discipline that can help and want to be in a discipline that can help.
Those on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic are experiencing some of their toughest years. Vitriol, harassment, and long hours worked on those front lines. Despite all this, though, there's still a high interest in nursing schools.
Just as an example, here at UBC in Vancouver, We have 120 seats available now. We are in the midst of working with government to expand that. But last year, we had 860 applications for those 120 seats. So there are a lot of people who are actually applying for the program.
We have a year-and-a-half wait list to come into the program. So I can't say we've had an increase or a decrease. The interest has remained strong regardless for the students coming into this program. It is definitely a different time. Maybe there's different questions, but the numbers haven't changed significantly.
3 more schools we reached out to, Langara Okanagan College and Vancouver Community College, said they were seeing similar trends, with applications remaining at the very least steady.
During the pandemic, we've seen a definite bump up of applicants. And in their applications, they actually talk about the pandemic motivating them to look at nursing as a career in a new way and wanting to contribute.
I think probably part of what's feeding this too is the nurses who are in the field right now. A lot of the senior nurses have been very, very taxed with the COVID situation. And so, we know within the discipline that there'll be people that'll be choosing to retire.
Despite prospective students being keen, it doesn't mean you'll be seeing a flood of nurses anytime soon.
Nursing is very much a program of both practice and theory. And the practice happens in the health authorities. And so in the health authorities right now, well, it's a bit tough and so that we call that our clinical placement experiences. So those clinical placements are very precious. And I don't think we're in a position right now that if we wanted more seats, we could just say, could you have more students?
As for government action, Premier John Horgan says he's committed to retention and recruitment, but that more time is needed to train everyone, including nurses who immigrate from other countries. In New Westminster, Ria Renouf, City News.
One of the 4 closely contested ridings, which had been too close to call in BC, is now official. Elections Canada has confirmed Liberal Patrick Wheeler has been re-elected in West Vancouver's Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky. Wheeler had been in a tight race with Conservative John Weston, but with all the mail-in votes now counted, Wheeler has come out on top with just under 34% of the vote, compared to Weston's 30%.
Expect Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to act quickly in picking his new cabinet after the election. However, he may face some challenges as he crafts his inner circle.
We're builders, we're healers, we're folks who care about one another. And it's just so important that we begin the dialogue in many ways with what is Two-Spirit? How do Two-Spirit people fit into Canadian society? Or even a better question, why do we identify as Two-Spirit?
He's breaking new ground for 2S LGBTQ plus Canadians as the first two-spirited person elected to the House of Commons. Blake Desjardins is part of a record year with 7 queer MPs elected to the lower house. Desjardins is already getting used to answering questions about his identity. He says that it's a complex identity, not just restricted to orientation or gender, but centering around his Indigenous identity.
So we have a Cree word for it actually called Testawinawak. Testawinawak means the in-between people, the people who are not male, the people who are not female, people who are often more diverse than that. In many Indigenous cultures, including my culture, there's a diversity of genders.
Desjardins says he's excited to represent Edmonton Griesbach in the House, keen to get started on policy that could make real change. In particular, he wants to see the ban on blood donations from men who have sex with men lifted and a ban on conversion therapy. Both came before the previous parliament. Both failed to pass before the election was called.
My concern is time. It's a minority parliament. We know they don't last 4 years. It's getting that done and making sure we go beyond words and actually finish this thing.
As always, I think there's still plenty of room to grow, plenty of room for improvement. We've yet to see a trans, non-binary or gender non-conforming person elected in Canada.
Erica Lenti, senior editor at Extra magazine, says this year's class of MPs shows Canada is moving to a point where a candidate's sexual orientation doesn't matter. But Lenti believes Canada is still learning to accept trans, non-binary non-binary and gender non-conforming people.
I think it speaks volumes that none of the folks who are elected in this past election are trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. There were plenty of folks who were running, but not in viable seats.
In Ottawa, Shaoli Lee, City News.
Making a cabinet is never easy.
With the election now largely behind us, the art of cabinet making will take center stage. Expect Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to waste little time in naming his new inner circle.
This former Deputy Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Paul Martin expects the size of cabinet to remain roughly the same, but Trudeau will face a tricky balancing act.
Not only gender diversity and geographic diversity, but also, new and old. You want to have some experience in there, but you want to also demonstrate a fresh face after a new mandate.
4 women ministers will not be returning since they either didn't run again or lost their seats, so those vacancies will have to be filled to reach gender parity. Some men in cabinet may also have to be demoted to address new regional dynamics, such as Liberals being elected in Alberta, more MPs in British Columbia, and some experienced MPs in Ottawa. And instead of waiting over a month to name new ministers as he did in 2019, the Prime Minister could have a new team in place in a couple of weeks.
Early-ish October, I'm going to say in and around Thanksgiving is when I would suspect that we would have a cabinet.
That will allow enough time for them to get up to speed on their files before the House of Commons returns at the end of next month and be ready for quick action to deal with the pandemic and follow through on key election promises. The other challenge is to keep caucus pleased with the picks, since many MPs will feel they deserve a seat at the table.
You're inevitably going to disappoint far more people than you're going to make happy.
We'll see who makes the cut in the coming weeks. In Ottawa, Cormac McSweeney, City News.
Lululemon is the new official outfitter of Team Canada. The Vancouver-based athletic company will dress Canada's Olympic and Paralympic committees, starting with next year's Games in Beijing. The contract runs through the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles. Athletes, coaches, and other members of Team Canada will wear Lululemon-designed clothing and accessories for the opening and closing ceremonies, medal ceremonies, and within the athletes' village.
The Vancouver Canucks took to the ice for training camp on Thursday, and it was a trial by fire of sorts for the Nucks, who participated in a bag skate, a.k.a. a really tough skate. Head coach Travis Green says it's a good way to assess players' fitness to start the year.
It's a tough skate, but a lot of them have done it a lot of times. I think new players probably struggle with it a little bit more just because they haven't done it. Guys that have been here, they know what's coming. And again, like I've seen the skate done a lot of times, so you learn a lot about what a guy's done over the summer to get ready, especially if they know that it's coming.